And let's begin by telling you that the federal government may cut its crude oil supply to Dangote Petroleum Refinery, reducing it from the current allocation of 300,000 barrels per day, except if there's a surge in Nigeria's oil output. This reduction is expected to take place as part of adjustments under the government's naira-for-crude initiative following the coming on-stream of the Warri and Port Harcourt refineries. Both refineries currently operate at a combined capacity of about 135,000 barrels per litre. The plants, managed by the Nigerian National Petroleum Company Limited, commenced operations recently after years of neglect by successive governments preferring fuel imports. It was gathered that the planned reduction of crude to the Dangote refinery was also predicated, on the necessity to ensure a sufficient supply of crude oil to all refineries. And now joining us to discuss this further is oil and gas analyst Suraj Oyewale, Suraj, hi, and Happy New Year to you. Let's just get started. I mean, one has to ask to begin, what are the existing contractual agreements between NNPC and Dangote Refinery regarding crude supply?
Thanks so much, Judith, and compliments of the season to you. You all know that oil and gas industry is quite important to the country, and the government tries as much as possible to, just to guide it, to protect it, to enter into negotiations and agreements with players in the industry, just to advance the country's energy security. And it is in furtherance of that the government of Nigeria decided to enter into some form of contract with refineries, especially the Dangote Refinery, which is the biggest local refinery we have at the moment. Some sort of because ordinarily the currency of the oil and gas industry, especially the upstream industry, is dollar, because the transactions, because it's an international commodity. Transactions are concluded in dollars. Sellers and buyers have to agree contracts in dollars. But in this case, we have a situation in which the players are both local. We have NNPC being the government eye in industry, a local company. And we also have Dangote Refinery, which is also a local company. The government are saying that, rather than having to go and source the dollar to pay for the crude supply from NNPC, allow me to pay, allow me to pay in naira, so that the burden on FX, imagine the volume of dollar you have needed to purchase crude supply that you need to refine, and because the product from such is going to be sold to domestic market mostly, and that will be naira. So the feedstock also, if it is in naira, it helps your transaction better, and also reduces the pressure on our foreign exchange, which ultimately ties down to the value of naira. So it is all this thinking that made government agree with the Dangote refinery that I'm happy to give you crude, but rather than pay in dollar, which is the currency of the international market, which is currency of the crude market, pay me in naira in addition for me to supply. In return for me supplying you this crude. So that was the summary of the whole agreement, and of course, NNPC was guaranteed to provide about 300,000 barrels per day. Unfortunately, they've not been able to meet that, but to meet that, but I think they've been able to manage it so far.
Right, and at this point, one has to ask about Dangote Refinery's operations. If a reduction were to happen in their crude supply from NNPC, how would it impact Dangote Refinery's operations and production? And what then would now be their alternative, crude supply sources if, Dangote were to explore other sources to mitigate potential disruptions?
Okay, the capacity of Dangote is about 250,000 barrels of oil per day. That's the final capacity of Dangote Refinery. If it's operating at full capacity, that's how much it needs. Okay, and the government of Nigeria are guaranteed to supply roughly half of that at about 200,000 barrels per day. So even at that, even that crude supply is unable, is to meet the requirements of Dangote on daily basis, operating at full capacity. Okay, so they're already doing some export anyway. I mean, they're already importing rather. They're already importing part of the crude because what they're getting from the government is way less than what they need to refine. To meet their own supply, of the fuel. Okay, so alternatives available to them include, first, of course, they may have to ramp up their own imports, so they have to import crude more so that they can, meet their own consumption target, their own refining target. Then the other alternative is maybe to go into partnership or some sort of contract with local suppliers, the likes of international oil companies and other independent producers. If they could also help to make up for the shortfall in the supply from NNPC. So those are the alternatives to them. Local supply from known NNPC sources or ramping up their imports of crude oil.
And lastly, we have to talk about, when it comes to mediating or solving or resolving potential, conflicts or disputes or issues from this. What are the regulatory bodies, what are their roles, such as the Nigerian Midstream and Downstream Petroleum Regulatory Authority? How can they play in resolving any potential dispute or issues related to crude supply for Dangote refineries?
Okay, like you rightly stated, there might be some potential issues from this because even at the moment, there have been some sort of disagreement between NNPC and the Dangote Refinery even within this contract. Far back November last year, one of the executives of Dangote Refinery was in the media saying that even Dangote was not able to, NNPC was not able to meet the 200,000 barrels per day contractual obligations, to supply to the market to them. So there's been some sort of issue. In the contract. Even before now that supply is even going to reduce further. Of course, the regulator for this, the Nigerian Midstream and Downstream Petroleum Regulatory Authority, NNPCL, of course, they might have to step in, and they are not primarily set up to mediate in matters of dispute. Their own mandate is essentially to ensure that the provisions of the laws are followed in the operations of the midstream and downstream oil and gas sector, to make sure that standards are met, quality control, monitoring, and all of these things are the primary functions of the regulator. But here we are talking about two big players having some issues, so definitely the regulator may have to step in and ultimately we have to probably call them to the table, discuss what the issues are, maybe even join part of the negotiating team with other producers, so that the shortfall in supply could be met by other producers, maybe independent producers, or international companies could also make up for the shortfall. These are things that can be mediated and facilitated by the regulator.
Well, we wait to see how this event will play out in the coming weeks or months. But Suraj, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate you for doing this with us today.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Suraj Oyewale there, he's an oil and gas analyst. Just give us a bit of insight regarding a potential supply cut of crude from the Nigerian Petroleum Limited company to Dangote Refinery. The President, Bola Tinubu, has urged state governors to collaborate with local government chairmen in a bid to drive development to the grassroots of the country. President Tinubu, while speaking to the governors in Lagos following a visit to his Lagos home, says that reports of a feud between the federal and state governors is misplaced, as the federal government is not interested in taking over the structures of local governments from their states. He called for collaboration between all tiers of government, with the welfare of citizens as their very core objective.
There was some gossip that maybe we had a disagreement or quarrel and everything when it was local government's autonomy. No. Just drive the development down there to the local government authorities. Nobody wants to take the control away from you. But collaboration collaboration. Let's do it together and make sure Nigeria is better off from it.
Nigeria's Vice President Kashim Shatima has expressed optimism over the rebound of the nation's economy. The Vice President spoke to newsmen after a meeting with lawmakers in Lagos, saying that the nation's economy is on an upward trajectory and will continue to improve in 2025. He says that the executive arm of government will work with the parliament to ensure that no stone is left unturned in improving the lives of citizens and end difficulties experienced in the past.
I'm highly optimistic about tomorrow. I believe we have turned the corner, and inshallah we shall have a very robust economic activities in the new year. I believe Nigerians will prosper. The economy has started picking up, and in the coming weeks and months, Nigerians will start smiling for the better. We are working assiduously with the National Assembly to come up with robust solutions to our national challenges. There is no nation that is immune to the economic headwinds across the world. The crisis in Ukraine and so many other global trends are affecting us adversely because we are part of the global community. But I want to assure Nigerians that the economy is turning the corner. Sure. By the grace of God, we have crossed the Rubicon and we are on a path to sustain growth. We wish Nigerians well.
The Labour Party's 2023 presidential candidate Peter Obi has called on President Bola Tinubu to prioritize combating corruption within Nigeria's public service. Addressing a press conference in Abuja on Thursday, Obi urged the president to ensure thorough investigations and recoveries of stolen or missing public funds while addressing historical corruption cases. The former Anambra State governor emphasized the need for greater transparency and accountability in public procurement and contract awards to curb corruption. Obi also criticized Tinubu's frequent overseas trips, noting that the president has spent over 30% of his time in office abroad, with more than 30 publicly recorded trips. He suggested Tinubu should instead dedicate time to visiting Nigeria's 36 states, proposing 2 days in each state, totaling 72 days to address domestic issues. The Conference of United Political Parties, CUP, has blasted President Bola Tinubu, saying his speeches, which have so far not been matched with corresponding action, are pushing more Nigerians into excruciating poverty. The National Secretary of the COP, Peter Ame, stated this in response to the President's New Year Day nationwide address on Wednesday. According to him, 2024 was a very harsh year for most Nigerians because of the impulsive decisions taken by the government. Ame stated that when the president said he had dealt with corruption, there were no facts to support the assertion. While speaking on the presidential plan to float a company to reduce inflation, Ame said it was another plow to increase administrative bottlenecks into the process. The leader of the Nigerian Senate, Oyewale Bamidele, has said that consideration of the 49.7 trillion naira 2025 budget and the tax reform bills are two items topping the National Assembly's agenda in the new year. Bamidele made this statement in his New Year message to Nigerians, made available to newsmen in Abuja on Wednesday. In the message entitled Another Year of Limitless Opportunities, Bamidele said that the next few weeks would be devoted to scrutinizing the 2025 appropriation bill, tax reform bills 2024, and the investigation of economic sabotage in the petroleum industry, among others. According to him, key economic reform initiatives that had been in the pipeline to open up Nigeria for real businesses, which would create limitless opportunities, would also be deliberated upon. The federal government has also launched the 2024 withholding tax regulations, marking a step forward in modernizing Nigeria's tax system. Effective January 1st, 2025, the regulations approved by President Bola Tinubu in July and gazetted in October aim to simplify compliance and support key economic sectors like SMEs, manufacturing and agriculture. Presidential Fiscal Policy Chairman Taiwo Oyewale announced the changes on New Year's Day, highlighting key features such as reduced withholding tax rates for low-margin businesses and exemptions for SMEs, farmers and manufacturers. The regulations also streamline tax credit processes and address compliance challenges, promoting transparency and reducing tax evasion. Officials hope these reforms will foster growth and ease the financial burden on businesses. You're watching news now on News Central Television. We're going to a short break. When we return, organized labor pushes for minimum wage increase in 2025. We have the details shortly. Join us again. Organized labor says it is advocating for an annual adjustment to Nigeria's 70,000 naira minimum wage to reflect inflation. According to President of the Trade Union Congress, Festus Osifu, the proposal aims to link wage increases to yearly inflation rates. He noted that waiting for periodic reviews, even under the new 3-year adjustment rule, fails to keep pace with rising costs. Osifu suggested that inflation figures released annually by the National Bureau of Statistics should be applied to the minimum wage. He explained that if inflation stands at 35%, the wage would be adjusted accordingly. Labor unions argue that the current 70,000 naira introduced in July of 2024 is insufficient amid surging living costs fueled by higher energy prices and subsidy removal. And now to discuss this, we're joined by labor law expert Oyewale Oguntuashe. Oyewale, compliments of the season and Happy New Year to you.
Happy New Year to you too, Judith. How are you?
Well, I'm doing the New Year. That's all that matters. Let's get started. I mean, how effective is this proposed system of annual adjustments based on inflation address the issue of wage erosion in Nigeria? I mean, if you're saying yearly, what if the inflation jumps from 35 to 50 in 1 month? Just saying. It's a question. Just asking.
Okay, it's all right. Well, in looking at the proposal made by the Nigerian Labour Congress, let me first say something. It's extremely laughable to me because there is a Latin maxim in law that says that volenti non fit injuria. That means you can't claim injury to what you already consented to. Now, if you look at the Minimum Wage Act, the amended 2024, you will see that there is a clear provision as to how the minimum wage can be arrived at. And these provisions were followed. The Nigerian Labour Congress, the Trade Union Congress, they were all part of it. Suggestions were made. It took an extensive and expansive deliberation. Now, for them now to be coming and now to be proposing that, okay, the previous deliberation and agreement that now gave birth to the reviewed Minimum Wage Act is no longer or should no longer be in place, and they should now review it. For me, I don't think I agree with that, because the legal framework for this thing is that, and in accordance to what they agree upon, every three years, I think the issue of inflation should have been put into proper perspective before they agree on every 3 years. Now, whatever they are proposing now, for me, I don't think the federal government will agree to it. And even if the federal government want to agree to it, it will be extremely discretionary because the legal framework is very clear. And the previous provision, I think Section 3 or Section 4 was amended from 5 years to 3 years. Now, what were they looking at? As at the time the provision was amended from 5 years to 3 years, why can't they insist that it should be done yearly? So I think whatever they are doing now, they should wait till after 3 years, because that's the principle of rule of law.
Right.
Except the federal government wants to that their discretion.
Right. I mean, we had this conversation back in July of 2024, and even after when this was, and we talked about this, that 3 years is not visible. It's not visible for the future. It must be looked at. And now for the TUC to come out with this, it begs to ask the question about the mechanism, right? Can this mechanism then ensure that the minimum wage remains a living wage and keeps pace with the rising cost of living? Should the government decide to, do this at a, cautionary or discretionary pace in how they see fit, will this ensure a certain level of living wage?
Well, even if they decide to do it, we need to understand something. And we need to understand that sometimes increase in minimum wage may not be the solution. Now, what are the indices that are causing inflation? That may as well be the solution. So if the government can address the indices, and I think that's what they should be pushing for, indices in terms of fuel, indices in terms of food inflation, indices in terms of electricity. Those are the things that is causing things to skyrocket, commodities to skyrocket. So I believe that if those things can be addressed, then we are not going to witness hyperinflation or galloping inflation, as it were. And it may not be the appropriate solution to now be saying that minimum wage should be increased yearly to reflect living wage. Because whether we like it or not, even if the government increases minimum wage, commodities will also increase. And at the same time, we should also consider the ability to pay. For example, most of the states now, how many of them are complying with this new minimum wage now? How many? There are some that they cannot pay. There are some that they are still struggling to pay. So those are the things that should be put in proper perspective before Labour comes out and now start proposing another thing. And like I said before, this thing is strictly a product of law. It is not what someone can come and say that, okay, we want to review this again. Nigeria operates a written constitution, in which case there is a regulatory procedure under our constitution in which the bill, the laws rather, can be amended. An act of parliament can be amended. So anything they are making proposal on now, it will be subject to amendment again by the National Assembly. We need to put that into proper perspective before the Nigerian Labour Congress start making all these proposals. So those are the things I'm saying.
Right. And, you just talked about the potential challenges of implementing such a system, right? And just saying that the focus should be on looking at the indices and just improving the economy. But how will the annual adjustment, to the minimum wage impact the Nigerian economy? Let's look at that from that point of view. Could it lead to increased labor costs for businesses and even potentially impacting inflation?
Well, you've already answered the question. If they are just minimum wage, we also need to look at the private sector, because this issue is tripartite. We have government on one hand, we have employees that are represented by the Nigerian Labour Congress and Trade Union Congress on the other hand, and we also have the private organization as a third party. Now, for the private organization, what they are going to do, if there is an adjustment, is that it should also amount to increase in their own expenses. If it amounts to increase in their own expenses as far as salaries is being paid, what they are going to do is to also increase their services. Everything would automatically increase. For me, I don't think that the economy will be better off if government stops continuously increase minimum wage. In as much that I will support minimum wage, but I would also say that it should be done, with caution, in such a way that inflation will not skyrocket. Of course, we already have inflation. But there is another type of inflation that may be caused by constant increase in the minimum wage, which I don't want to happen. Almost all the sectors will be affected. So that's exactly what I'm trying to say.
Right. Iroluwa, many thanks for coming on and just doing this with us. Let's see what will happen in the coming weeks and months, and let's see what happens. If the president decides, comes off holiday, gets back to work. And let's hear if all the labor heads get back to the table, and this can even be visible at the end. But once again, thank you, Iroluwa Ogutuashe. He is a labor law expert, just giving us a bit of insight there on TUC's proposal. Away from that, most workers in Abia State are yet to resume work despite the end of the holiday. A visit to some of the government workplaces in Umuahia by News Central's Chinwe Ogeli showed that the holidays may be far from being over. Take a look.
We waited until 11 a.m. before checking out the ministries and other government establishments to see if more people will turn out for work.
We resumed because New Year holiday is over and work started today.
It's past 11 a.m. today being Thursday, the second day of January 2025, and I am at the Workers' Secretariat here in Umuahia, Abia State Capital, to observe the level of resumption to duty by the workers in the state. Behind me is the parking lot that usually gets filled up with vehicles, but today there are just very few cars that are there. So we'll be going into the building to find out the people that have returned to work. In some ministries, there were few staff present as of the time we called. But in some, it was nearly a ghost town with offices locked and no one inside. Although some of the workers we tried to interview declined, those who spoke attributed the situation to a number of factors.
Maybe some traveled to their villages. That's why they are not here.
Why you didn't see a lot of people in their duty posts might be maybe for them to, some of them, for them to come back from villages, or some of them are on their way coming. I would say from now till let's say 12 to 1, some of them will be in their duty post because we are just resuming today.
There are those who must be at their duty posts no matter the situation. There are indications that it may take more days for all the workers to resume duties.
But I believe by next week, this place will fill with many people.
With the retirement of the state's head of service on the 31st of December 2024, Abia State civil servants may have been left at liberty to act as they wish until the inauguration of the new designate. In Umuahia for News Central, I am Chinwe Ugele.
The National Population Commission says that it has registered over 10 million children in the last 3 months, presenting them with birth certificates. The chairman of the commission, Issa Kwara, made this known while speaking to newsmen after a presentation by the First Lady Oluremi Tinubu to the parents of the first babies of the year with birth certificates at the Asukoro General Hospital in Abuja. Kwara, who was represented by the Federal Commissioner from Katsina State, spoke with newsmen with the Director General of the Commission, saying that national identification numbers were also attached to the certificates, a new strategy by the Commission to get the babies registered.
3 months, we have registered more than 10 million children aged 0 to 5 years. And this registration is continuous. We will now henceforth concentrate more of under 1 year registration. And we are making tremendous progress.
It's a legal right that any child born in Nigeria is supposed to be identified, recognized, and located. And one of the instruments for doing that is the birth certificate.
At least 27 migrants, including women and children, have died, and 83 others were rescued after 2 boats capsized near the Kankana Islands of central Tunisia, a civil defense official confirmed on Thursday. Zaid Diri, the head of civil defense in FACTS, stated that the victims and survivors, all from sub-Saharan African countries, were attempting the dangerous journey to Europe. Search operations for potential missing passengers are ongoing, according to the Tunisian National Guard, which oversees coastal rescue efforts. Tunisia remains a major departure point for migrants seeking to reach Europe, with Italy's Lampedusa island just 150 kilometers away, often being their first destination. Every year, tens of thousands reach the treacherous Mediterranean crossing, where shipwrecks have become increasingly frequent, especially during bad weather conditions. Zimbabwe has officially abolished the death penalty after the president signed into law an act that will commute to jail term the sentence of around 60 prisoners on death row. Speaking on the development, the executive director of Amnesty International Zimbabwe, Lucia Masuka, she applauded the government for, taking this step. There has been a moratorium on execution, in the southern African country since 2005, although courts have continued to hand down the death sentence for crimes including murder, treason, and terrorism. The Death Penalty Abolition Act says courts can no longer deliver a sentence of capital punishment for any offense, and any existing death sentences would need to be commuted to jail term.
We applaud the government for taking this important step in terms of aligning our laws to international standards. You may be aware that the optional protocol on the Covenant on Civil and Political Rights provides for the abolition of the death penalty. So this step is also a step towards aligning our laws to international standards. And presently we have about 62 people who are under the death sentence. And what this piece of legislation means for them is that they are going to be sentenced afresh before the High Court.
I think a man or a woman should just die a natural death. If he has committed a crime that deserves death sentence, I think it's better for that person to stay so long in prison than having him killed or having a death sentence.
Well, I think it's supposed to be abolished because biblically one is supposed to take someone's life. So therefore, I think someone should receive a severe punishment instead.
The suspect in the deadly New Orleans attack, Shamsuddin Jabbar, posted videos indicating that he was inspired by ISIS just hours before ramming a truck into a New Year's crowd. Now, this was revealed by the U.S. President Joe Biden on Wednesday. Now, Biden added that the situation is very fluid and the law enforcement and intelligence community are continuing to look for any connections, associations, or co-conspirators. He said that investigation included the execution of search warrants at various locations in New Orleans and other states, an operation by the FBI and other law enforcement officials at a traffic intersection in Houston, and questions as to whether there could be any connection to an attempt to blow up a Tesla Cybertruck in front of the Trump Hotel in Las Vegas.
The FBI has reported to me the killer was an American citizen, born in Texas. He served in the United States Army on active duty for many years. He also served in the Army Reserve until a few years ago. The FBI also reported to me that mere hours before the attack, he posted videos on social media indicating that he was inspired by ISIS, expressing a desire to kill. The ISIS flag was found in his vehicle, which he rented to conduct this attack.
And now for more on this, I'm joined by our international correspondent, Abia Hagen. Abia, compliments of the season and Happy New Year to you.
Happy New Year to you, Judith.
Let's get started, shall we? I mean, what's the latest on the attack in New Orleans?
Well, yes, this attack that took place in the early hours of New Year's Day. Now, authorities say that they believe there are multiple people were involved in that attack. As you said, the attacker has been identified as Shamsuddin Jabbar. He was a U.S. Army veteran from Texas, and he was killed in that shootout with police. Now, it's thought he had an Islamic State flag in the truck. That was a truck that plowed into people on the streets. Now, New York is also under a heightened state at the moment. The mayor of New York, Eric Adams, has said, although there are no immediate threats to the city at the time, the move comes as in an abundance of caution. So you're going to have increased NYPD presence at relevant locations, including Trump Tower and Times Square. Now, some of the victims from the New Orleans attack Lots of them are still being confirmed, the injured and the dead, but a few people have been identified. One was Martin Tiger Beck, who was a well-known American college football player. There was Reggie Hunter, who was a store manager and a father of two. Nicole Perez, who was a 27-year-old mother, and Kareem Badawi, who was a University of Alabama student. He was identified via his Facebook page.
And what do we know about the attacker, Shamsuddin Jabbar?
Well, yes, he was an American-born Army veteran, a U.S. citizen from Texas now, and a now removed LinkedIn profile. The profile told us that he worked in various roles in the U.S. Army, including in human resources and information technology. He was deployed to Afghanistan from February 2009 to January 2010. He studied at Georgia State University. He was married twice. His first marriage ended in 2012. His second lasted from 2017 to 2022. Now, there's also those videos that he's purported to have posted before the attack, where he talks about his affiliation to Islamic State, and also where he talks about gathering his family together and killing them. And those videos are thought to have been posted just hours before he went on this deadly rampage.
And lastly, I do have to ask you, there was also an explosion, just outside the Trump resort in Las Vegas, a luxury property. What can you tell us about that? And is it being linked to this attack?
Yes, that also occurred early on New Year's Day around 8:20 a.m. And this was when the driver of a Tesla Cybertruck blew up the truck just outside Trump Towers in Nevada. So one person was killed and 7 other people were injured. Now, President Joe Biden has said that U.S. investigators are seeing if the two attacks were linked. They haven't been linked so far, but there are some similarities. There was vehicles both used in that attack, and both those vehicles were rented from an app-based car rental company called Truro. Both of them took place at tourist spots, and both of them on New Year's Day. And although the attacker in the Las Vegas attack hasn't formally been identified, it's thought that he is of a military background like Jabbar. So that attack occurred as well on New Year's Day in Las Vegas, and authorities at the moment are trying to draw any similarities that they can, but perhaps these attacks were connected. But like I said, that has not been confirmed as yet.
Well, Afia, I must say thank you so much for taking out the time to join us today. Afia Hagen there, our international correspondent, just a bit of update there regarding the car ramming in New Orleans and also the explosion in front of Trump Tower in Las Vegas. Once again, thank you. In 2024, Nigeria's extractive industry experienced a mix of investment conditions. The oil and gas sector faced several challenges, including theft, underinvestment, and deteriorating infrastructure, while the Petroleum Industry Act's regulatory reforms aimed to restore investor confidence. Conversely, solid minerals saw a rise in exploration activity driven by incentives and the formalization of artisanal operations. George Itomi, principal partner at George Itomi and Partners, shared his insights on the challenges and opportunities he envisions for the sector in 2025 on Business Edge. Take a look.
Projecting a boost in oil production, but whether you get the foreign exchange that goes with that is a different matter. Don't forget, we now have our refineries back on stream, and they require feedstock crude oil. So which means crude oil you would ordinarily have sold in its crude form will now be given to local manufacturers, the Dangote Refinery, there are other smaller refineries, and then of course we now know Port Harcourt and Warri refineries are coming on stream. You're going to commit crude to them, and whenever you commit that crude, the benefit in terms of foreign exchange you will be deprived of. But at least the upside of that is that it will go towards a more competitive domestic end product industry. And you need that because what's fueling inflation today is the astronomical rise in so many things, including fuel prices. So we hope, and we're already beginning to see, that with the rejuvenation of the refineries, fuel prices, pump prices will begin to come down. We're beginning to see that happen. And if that happens, it will go towards a beehive to generate a beehive of economic activities. So what you might lose in terms of your foreign exchange earnings.
Nigeria's naira liberalization, which kicked off in June 2023, has been a double-edged sword. On one hand, it was intended to stabilize the currency, but on the other hand, it has led to an unprecedented cost of living crisis. The naira's value dropped from 907 naira 11 kobo per dollar at the end of 2023 to 1,535 naira to a dollar by the end of 2024. The parallel market, where the naira trades unofficially, saw an even steeper decline, with the currency exchanging at 1,660 naira, beg your pardon, per dollar, representing a 26.8% depreciation from 1,215 naira per dollar in 2023. Now, Oladipo Ajayi, head of fixed income and FX at Chapel Hill, Durham, expresses views on the president's speech, particularly regarding the claim that the naira has strengthened against the dollar on Business Edge. Take a look.
And when you now compare to where naira actually closed at the end of the year at 1,535, I'm sure that is what he's trying to say, because it couldn't have been the fact that the president is comparing where the currency is trading at the end of the year to where he was at the beginning of last year. So I think what the president is saying is that at the point in time, we saw the currency depreciated as low as 1,700 to the greenback, but at the end of the day, he actually reversed to 1,535, and that's exactly what the president is trying to pass across. That's actually continuing between that January, because it was the spread that we're coming with in the year 2023 into year 2024. So until the month of February, when the central bank came on board with aggressive monetary policy, so like raising rates aggressively. The first thing they did was raise rates by 400 basis points.
Now to sports. The president of the Boxing Promoters Association of Nigeria, Omonele Yakubu Imadu, has pledged that more projects will be implemented in 2025 in order to improve amateur boxing in Nigeria. Imadu was speaking in Ikorodu on the 1st of January during the Week 18 hostilities of the Ukatugo Boxing League. According to him, 2024 had seen the beginning of the Ukatugo Pan-African Boxing Championships in Nigeria, Benin and Togo, as well as the hosting of the Maiden Boxing Awards in Lagos. He pledged that 2025 will see greater development for boxing in Nigeria, with the staging of the first ever World Boxing Council Amateur Boxing Championship in Lagos in February, as well as other grassroots development programs lined up for the year.
Begin a new year. We want to start it on a good note. We want to make sure the consistency that we have put in so far, we have to continue setting the pace. We lead, others follows. The most important thing is we want to continue to develop boxing, and we are not going to deviate from that. Come 2025, in the cost of that consistency, we have all kinds of programs lined up. The most important one is the WBC Amateur Boxing Tournament, which is scheduled to happen on February 6, 7, and 8, where we will be hosting the best of African amateur boxers. And this is going to be happening for the very first time in the entire continent of Africa. And Dangote Boxing Promotion is proud to be the host, to be the promotion that is bringing it down to Lagos.
And that's all we can take at this hour. But before we go, let's take another look at some of the major stories. NNPCL may cut crude oil supply to Dangote plant amid onstream of Warri and Port Harcourt refineries. The former presidential candidate Peter Obi has urged President Tinubu to tackle corruption within a public service. And we also told you that 27 migrants have died, 83 have been rescued after boats capsized off Tunisia. Now remember, they can watch News Central live on DSTV channel 422. We're on Star Times channel 274. Find us on Apple TV and stream us live on YouTube. Many thanks for watching. I am Judith TV. Bye for now.